Welcome to Dasso and Hunt. I'm Zhao Pierre Ruth for Information Week. And in this episode, we are having the first of our Breaking Bread sessions where we bring a CIO or CTO for an organization and somebody from the operational side of another organization to discuss a shared pain point to get different perspectives in terms of how they might look at this from within their organization and potentially have some perspectives that they bring back to their organizations from having this conversation. And for this episode, I am glad to be joined by Josh Mason, CTO for RecordPoint,
Hello.
and Katie Klein, Vice President of Marketing for Comcast Business. Katie, Josh, thank you so much for making yourselves available today.
Yeah, it's nice. I look forward to having a conversation today.
Okay, great. So it's probably the case where many organizations, after you settle into the operations and the needs of the business, there might be a mindset of, okay, this is what we do, this is what we need, these are the things that we've been doing. They might have legacy technology that might get set in place, but after some years, you might have a sense of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it when it comes to technology that might be brought to bear. But what happens if there is some new technology, some new shiny objects on the market that are presented in a way that promise to revolutionize how you do business? But at the same time, that introduction of that new technology, there might be potentially significant investment that needs to go into place. There might be changes that the internal teams have to work with in terms of like learning how to work with this. So I want to present to you. So Katie, I'll just kind of put you on the spot. So let's say there are peers in the market that decide that that this new software for handling a database or customer outreach or whatever there's a particular tool that you're hearing or people are telling you this is the one. This is the one that's going to overhaul things and make life easier for how we handle this. But it is newer. And it's still in those kind of early days of just being out there, but that's the thing that people are latching onto. How would you kind of really broach and imagine you're coming up to Josh like, hey, so we want to we've heard about this. How does the conversation start where you want to bring to somebody who's like on that leadership side for the technology part of your organization to say, hey, here's this technology, we're thinking about possibly exploring it. How does that kind of start to unfold?
Well, first of all, I think you had me at new technology. We get really excited over here at Comcast when we hear of new things that are coming through. So we're always looking to test new technology. But I think the first thing is the number one question we're always asking is like, give me that ROI, right? Before you do all the cost benefit analysis, we want to understand like what's the benefit, what's the impact to whether it's internal operations to improve it, or truthfully, how it's going to benefit our customers, whether it's short-term or long-term. So we have to really consider all of those factors and look at how quickly could the team adapt it if this is an incredible new technology that we should really lean into. And truthfully, what does that demand even look like in the marketplace? So before we go and invest and do all those things, we need to take a look at all those factors and figure out, does it fit into our overall strategic business goals? So that we can find better ways to serve our customers and also for our internal teams as well on the operational side.
Gotcha. Josh, what kind of perspective would you bring to that? Especially, it's newer technology. What kind of security thoughts? What kind of, how is this going to mesh with, the fabric of what you're working with? What are the kind of considerations that come to mind for you?
Yeah. So I totally agree with Katie there. I mean, many of these business decisions and to move into this new software or any other type of business decisions all based around ROI, and that could be just in the cost of licensing to move to the new tech, but many times it's you're able to do a better job in these new systems, looking for higher efficiency gains, higher productivity gains out of those products. But in terms of you kind of went down the challenges path there. It's a lot of times you have to look at the data that needs to move from your old legacy systems into your modern systems, and how you're going to be able to protect that data and understand what you have as it moves in. understanding the scale of the data and the scale of the systems that go in, understanding downstream impacts of how those systems are used. It may be talked about, kind of in a single department, but there's, many other departments that are using, downstream, components for those things. But yeah, because I think it comes down to understanding the value that it brings, but also starting to itemize out those risks that you're going to have to manage as well.
So a bit about those potential risks or potential like areas of pause. Talking about data, what happens if, for example, like the database example, or the idea that you're going to try to migrate or move to something new that is in such a format that is, wholly different from what's been in place and what has, been stable for your organization. What are your thoughts then about, like, yes, this is potentially new, but what are your thoughts in terms of, and Kate, for you as well, about whether or not you want to like move forward, or how do you kind of like then try to, find a way to navigate that and talk to people on the, either side of your organization for this?
Look, I think you have to, you're wanting to instill some trust with the business stakeholders. They really care about, obviously the operations and the existing software they have that's, embedded in the fiber of their departments and what their teams do. So I think it's coming up with what is that rollout strategy going to look like as you move into the new technology? How are we going to be able to test it? Can you create some overlap between the old system and the new system, so you can kind of, identify kind of testing stakeholders that appear in the different departments that will use the new technology that can help you validate that the new system is working as compared to the old system. So keeping both systems in place. So don't do a, turn on the new one, turn off the old one, see if you can keep both systems, running simultaneously.
Just add to that, I think a lot of it too is around that trust factor. So it goes back to, like, you've got a backup, you've got that test environment, but also on the personal side, I think people get a little nervous when you bring in new technology. What's my role in all of it? How does it fit into what my day-to-day is, what my team is doing? How is it going to make my life easier? So I think there's that human aspect of it as well. I think that human touch is just as important as what role the technology itself will play in benefiting the business or the customer base. So I think communication and that change management plan is extremely important while you're, putting those safety protocols and security protocols in with it, from a data backup and testing and all the good things. It just creates better trust environment as you kind of transition from a concept into a potential test environment to truly a full rollout, so that everybody's bought in and understands what their role is in leveraging that new technology.
How would you approach those who might be curmudgeons, just to put it out there, who want to dig in and say, no, I'm comfortable with the systems that I've known for X amount of time. That's speaking personally, it took me a very long time to actually, even though I read about technology, to actually upgrade to actually have a smartphone. Years ago, I had a flip phone that had duct tape on its hinges, and as far as like how long I held on to it, finally kicking and screaming, upgraded to actually getting a smartphone. How do you approach those who feel they're confident what they do, they're familiar with a particular platform or solution, what have you, but then they're bringing this in, and it is apples to oranges to them. It is an anathema. How Katie, how do you approach that, and Josh, your thoughts as well?
Putting on my marketing hat, I think it's as much about selling externally as it is internally, to your point. And a lot of it comes around what's in it for me. I mean, it's so simple to say that, but finding those key stakeholders to like actually review and bring them into the fold early on when you're trying to assess this new technology and get their feedback, their buy-in, and let them be a part of the process. One thing that we do here, which I'm sure Josh probably does at RecordPoint as well, is we form these kind of like tiger teams to truly assess and build out what's the business case. And before we review it with senior leadership and get approvals and all the things. And so you already start to form this buy-in circle of experts, right? Where they believe in what the technology is going to bring. and finding that executive champion to get it across the finish line. And so I feel like when you have a really good forum of folks that are bought into what the benefit is within the technology, it starts to grow from there. And then you have a lot more just adoption across the board. And it helps with that, again, that change management piece. When people are a little skeptical or it feels frustrating or they don't understand the why behind it, it's very important that you kind of bring all of that in at the upfront and bring people along, I think, to kind of push new technologies forward. I think that in our experience, that helps significantly because you see a lot of really great innovative technology, but I think Josh hit on earlier, it's like if it can't scale or do multiple things, it's a lot of work for just that one thing. But if it has a long-term impact across our customers or the business or how it improves efficiencies in the day-to-day, you tend to get a lot more buy-in up front than, after the fact, right? So that's been our experience, at least at Comcast.
Yeah, totally agree with Katie. I think you always have the strong kind of dissenters, that are pushing back, but those are many times the people that you want to bring into the conversation, that have maybe a deep understanding of how the product's used in a different way, the legacy solution. Bringing them into the fold and listening and factoring solutions around what they're talking about into the new application is going to really help it sell. There can also be things that are happening behind the scenes, I guess, that there are a little less obvious reasons why you might be modernizing or moving to the new system that hopefully we're always bringing new value to customers and the business internally that is for the person, but there could be reasons like the legacy software you're using is going to reach end of life in 18 months, for example, which means it's no longer going to be updated, it's no longer going to be patched, you're not going to have increasing security concerns for the business, maybe a kind of a forcing function that is the reason to move moving forward. Especially right now, the regulatory landscape in the world is constantly changing. I'm trying a little bit here to stay away from AI a bit, but there's lots of stuff coming out there, and so that may force a business to have to make some changes from their legacy operations into a modern system that can meet those compliance regulations. And then also just in the amount of systems that you can integrate and the scope of coverage that you have for systems, there's kind of an expectation that you can, cover more of an ecosystem with a single platform. And as those integrations become more important, it becomes more important that the applications you use can connect to them.
Gotcha. Okay, you talked about making sure to look at the ROI, but what else and for both of you, what else is on your individual kind of checklist when you're looking at potential new technology? Sometimes I talk to folks and they say sometimes it's trade-off, something moving, working fast or being reliable or being secure, but maybe not having all of those things at like the peak, because in order to be absolutely secure, you're going to have to it might be cost a lot, or you might not have the speed of use or what have you. What are some of the other kind of like checklist things that you look at respectively for yourselves with your organizations?
That you just mentioned are kind of table stakes, honestly, that should be factored in any of the technologies that we're evaluating. But where my role kind of fits in is not only are we coming up with like the clarity as to why and the benefit to the business, but I'm thinking more of the go-to-market aspect of it. So not only the cost, but is it going to be disruptive to our teams if we launch it? What else do we have in the plan of record happening right now? How are we going to train our sales teams, our operational teams? The security aspect of it, like you mentioned, is huge. But also, if it's an external facing technology or something that will benefit customers, what is the demand? How's that going to improve the overall user or customer experience? Those are all extremely important, as well as I would even say adoption and buy-in, like we mentioned earlier. And is it going to create efficiencies to make all of our lives a lot easier? And a big one for us as well is just competitive. What does that competitive landscape really look like? Are others already adopting that technology? Are they using it and doing it really well? Are there any key learnings or benefits? Or can we lead the way with something that's very new and innovative that could disrupt the market? So all of those things are factors when we're thinking about new technology that we might want to implement within the business.
Yeah, so I'll kind of come at it from the kind of nerdy part, which is looking at for this new technology, what is the hosting model for it? Is this going to be a SaaS type solution, or is this something that's going to have to be on-prem, which would require a lot more kind of security and compliance investigation into it? Again, does this new system meet the regulatory requirements of the organization that we're in? I think a big question that everyone's facing right now is in terms of new tech is how do you leverage AI into an organization? How do you leverage things like Gemini, Microsoft Copilots? There's about only 6% of businesses, for example, in the last year from Microsoft who've started Microsoft Copilot rollouts have actually completed them. And the primary reason, I think, for 80% of those businesses, based on a bunch of surveys, is that they don't have necessarily all of the kind of information governance programs and AI governance programs in place within organizations. And so organizations are concerned about, how can I safely leverage those technologies? How do I safely put data into an AI platform and not leak not leak PII information, sensitive information into those systems? How do I govern that? And so I think, so for organizations, making sure that you have, good policies around those in place so that you can, assess those new solutions and make sure they fit into your, into how you operate as a business.
Based on your past experience, what can be a type of a hard ask, if you will, in terms of questions or changes that might raise concerns a bit about looking to find that like stable outcome, with making a move, looking at new technology, what we talked about the human aspect, there's a lot of that. Again, getting back to the security side of things, cost, what can be a hard ask if you're like, okay, this is interesting, but from the operational side, from the technical side, what are some of the kind of like the personal, like, whoa, wait, hang on a second, let's talk about this that you personally get.
There's a few things that have come up for us. I think, with us, we've been really focused on some mergers and acquisitions recently. So we acquired Masergy a little over a year ago, which is now called CB Global. It gives us a whole new span of products and solutions for our sales teams, but how to integrate that in back to like their system, sales tools, data in with ours, how we're delivering on that customer experience. And I'm even thinking something more recently, kind of piggybacking on Josh, your comments about AI. I think we're all trying to figure out how to best use it. So for us in the competitive landscape, we want to make sure that we're giving our customers the best offers and things that they have available to them. So we're really working hard on some more of our base customer tool sets, which has been an interesting conversation with finance to make sure that we're giving our customers the best that's available to them. Obviously with ensuring that we've got good growth and revenue coming in with the business. And so there's this balance of how to leverage technology in a very thoughtful, strategic way so it aligns with our business objectives. But it's, again, something we're constantly taking data and information and attributes to try to tweak and refine to make sure that we're utilizing some of these technologies in the best way possible. So there's a lot of behind the scenes things that are happening. So anything that touches money, I feel like is always like a really big one. And then obviously our growth trajectory on the enterprise side, like I said, with some of these new acquisitions, like we just acquired Nitel about a week or so ago, which gives us all the scale and opportunity. But how do you integrate all of that into our existing platforms? Is not, I wouldn't say a concern, but it's definitely an area of opportunity to like make sure that we do it the right way as we kind of grow the business.
Yeah, I think Katie hits a good point. Merger and acquisitions definitely adds a layer of complexity. I worked for an organization in the past, and there was an acquisition like every week or two, and I worked on the team that had to kind of bring in those systems. And so you're starting with those decisions of, do you leave the legacy systems in place and for how long? And you're trying to assess what kind of risk exists in those systems. Do you migrate the data and migrate the stuff from those systems into a new application, or in some cases, are you just archiving it off? It depends on the nature of the acquisition and how that data works. But and when you archive it off, do you still need access to that data, or do you just need to keep it for 7 years or 10 years, or does it need to go into a system that's kind of live? I think kind of going to the bleeding edge of the hard ask, and kind of a very specific example in the AI space again is like vibe coding is a really big thing that's happened and growing in the last year, and this is this ability using tools like V0, Lovable, Bolt, these kinds of things. But it's basically empowering kind of non-engineers to be able to go in and have kind of that chat GPT type of experience, but at the other end, you actually come out with an application that looks and works like a real application. It appears to be fully complete. And so there's this big push internally for people like in my type of position in the technology groups to say, look, we want to deploy these to our customers. We want to deploy these into the business immediately, like because in 3 days you're able to create an application. And so there's this current challenge with organizations to say, well, how do we leverage this this new vibe coding idea? We're empowering more people to be able to create these, but how do you do it safely? How do you still have application security in place and infrastructure security, and honor data sovereignty requirements and regulatory compliance and things like that? So we want to be able to leverage the high productivity you can get out of these tools, but do it in such a way that you don't end up in in the news, in the future.
And last question for you both. Is there anything that you wish that, or you want to kind of like get across to, the other side of the coin, this kind of discussion about, facing, the introduction of potential new technology to handle something that's like a legacy operation? There's just something more on the technical side, more on the operational side that you want to kind of like get across to make clear, like, this is crucial from your side of the coin, and this is why.
Look, yeah, I think involving the teams that are going to basically have to do the operations of that, or potentially do the deployment of the system, work on the migrations, including those kind of technology teams and security groups and stuff early in your evaluation process of the vendor selection, kind of during those RFPs, because we know that migrations to new systems can be complicated, and depending on the type of vendor you're working with, that might be a vendor that has a lot of experience in helping you move from a legacy operations into their tool. They may have a lot of different ways that they host, have a hybrid SaaS technology that would meet, very stringent, cybersecurity concerns that you might have as a government agency or working in FSI or healthcare. And so having influence and input from those organizations early, rather than kind of making it a business decision that's later with a vendor selection, and then, your technology groups are kind of stuck with, getting those things into place. Getting their input earlier could shorten the length of time and reduce the risk that you're going to have in moving to a modern system.
I 100% agree with that. I think there's a fine line too with like balancing innovation and stability within an organization. So I think we all get a little distracted by shiny objects, but I'm really just weighing the long-term significant benefits and how it aligns with the strategic priorities, and not only benefiting the business, but customers as well, I think is extremely important, because you want to make sure it's worth the lift, right? If you're going to come in and pull together these teams of people, it should be a no-brainer that they want to adopt it and champion it. So keeping it simple, I think, is also extremely important, and ensuring that you've got a really great change management plan. Sometimes what seems minor can sometimes be a lot for certain groups or individuals. And so making sure that you're just kind of caring for that, back to what Josh is saying, you've got that buy-in, you've got that group that's working on it. I think that's really key to any success, and that makes it measurable and not as painful maybe in the back end. So just bringing all the right people together and make sure that it's got that good long-term impact that you're looking for. And it's not just kind of the flavor of the month, because I think that can happen a lot with new technology. So keeping it simple is key.
Gotcha. Great. All right. Well, listen, those are the questions we had today. Katie, Josh, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the conversation. Nice meeting you, Katie.
Nice meeting you.
You can find the DOS Won't Hunt podcast on Podbean, Spotify, and other popular podcast platforms.